Hello, my name is Carter Kashuba, and I am with MBTV. Today, we are interviewing Miss Kloss about Black History Month. How do you personally define Black History Month, and why do you believe it is important for all communities to observe it?
I personally define Black History Month as a month where African Americans of stature are celebrated and taught. And I think it's very important because for decades our history has not been taught, nor has it been highlighted, and even now it's not taught broadly. I don't think we should have a Black History Month, and it wouldn't be necessary if all institutions and educational arenas would actually highlight Black history, but that is not the case. And so Carter G. Woodson is the founder of Black History Month. It started as a week, and it was later moved to a 1-month celebration. Some people say that this month should be abolished because some people don't want it to be taught, but I'm a great champion of celebration of Black History Month, not just in February, but every month, every day, throughout the year.
Can you share a moment in your life when Black History Month has truly resonated with you or shaped your perspective?
Yes, I am from a small town in North Carolina, and my high school was very small. I think we had a graduating class of like 150. But during my senior year of high school, my African American history teacher brought Black history to life for me. At that time, or I should say before that time, I knew very little about Black history. I had read some, but I didn't celebrate it. But he was the one who brought Black history to life through his teaching and actually through experience. I'm a strong believer that experience and opportunity are extremely important for students. And because for me, he just gave us all type of opportunities. He actually took about 30 students who were from the country, never been anywhere, never done anything significant, not world travelers. He took 30 students to Atlanta. I had never, at that time, as I say before, I'm from the country, so I don't think my senior year I'd ever stayed in a hotel or anything of that sort. But anyway, he took us to Atlanta, and we visited the grave of Martin Luther King. We visited the home site of a famous entrepreneur whose name I can't remember at this point. But anyway, we visited his home. We went to the home of Hugh Gloucester, who at that time was the president of Morehouse College, and we had lunch around his pool, which was something extreme because it was something that we had never experienced. So upon visiting Martin Luther King's home and his grave site and all of the historical sites in Atlanta, our teacher allowed Black history to come to life for us. He had prepared us. We had learned all type of Black history, but it came to life in just that one visit. So after taking his class, I decided that I'm going to learn as much as I can about Black history. And at that time, I started just reading anything that I could read. W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Booker T. Washington, Sojourner Truth. All of these people came to life after that class. And I'm just touching the surface of the many, many African Americans who have influenced history. And I wish that everybody would be as interested in it as I have been and as I am. I am a student of African American history. Even today, knowing that I'm going to retire very soon, I still study and learn as much as I can about my history because it is my history. Just as anybody else studies their history, I want people to know that this is what famous African Americans did to build this country. This country was not just built by people that you learn about every day, but they're people that you haven't learned about who built this country. The White House, for example, was built on the backs of slaves. Thomas Jefferson's home was built on the back of slaves. And so there's so much more to learn. There's a lot more for me to learn. I've read about Black history from the time that I was finished high school until now, and there's still a whole lot to learn.
What impact do you think Black History Month has had on the younger generation's understanding of their heritage?
I'm hopeful that it has had a grave impact on younger generations, but I am concerned that younger generations are not learning the history. Why? Because it's not being taught. Just 2 years ago, I learned from reading, or maybe even from another teacher, I don't remember, but I learned that that African American literature would be taught on an AP level, and I lobbied and talked to Dr. Ashburn and other administrators about bringing it to Broughton, because at that time I think it was going to be at Enloe or some other school in Wake County, but it was not going to be at Broughton. And I thought, okay, if it's going to be at Enloe, if it's going to be at Panther Creek or wherever, Millbrook, it needs to be at Broughton. And so Dr. Ashburn and Mr. McGovern lobbied to have that course here at Broughton. But if I had not pushed to have it here, I don't think we would have it. We had already, I was the first person at our school to teach African American literature. And Mr. Marlon Jones, Miss Ashley Thompson, and I were the first people to write a pacing guide for Wake County for the structure of teaching African American studies in the Wake County schools. I think that the skeletal structure of it is still being used today. I'm not certain about that. But anyway, my concern is that no, African American history does not have an impact on younger generations because they're not being taught. I always, when I'm teaching African American literature, or just maybe even talking to students, say to students, it is not the responsibility of the teacher to teach African American literature to you. Solely, I should say. It is your responsibility. Nobody's going to teach your history to you the way that it should be taught, especially if they don't understand it or if they're not comfortable teaching it. But it's your responsibility because it's your history. I do a litmus test when I teach African American studies to my students. Actually, I teach a class at NC State, and I just did this about 2 Saturdays ago. I cite 3 significant parts of history to see just how much students know about African American literature and history. And the 3 important historical points are the Trail of Tears, the Holocaust, and the triangle slave trade. And I don't use that word. I can't remember what word I use because that's kind of giving the answer away. But anyway, I use those 3 things as a litmus test, and I ask, how many of you know what the Trail of Tears is? And I may have 5-10 students to raise hands. And then I also ask, how many people know the Holocaust? And I normally have 15 or more. And then I ask, how many of you know what the triangular slave trade is? And I may have 1 or 2. So that's just a litmus test to let me know that our history is not being taught in the same way that other history is taught. Everybody knows what the Holocaust is, or at least most people do, and almost at least 50% of students in the class know what the Trail of Tears is, but very few people know about the triangle slave trade. And that word is something that I don't normally use. I don't remember what it is that I use, but it is the triangle slave trade. That's the answer.
What are some common misconceptions about Black history that you would challenge or dispel?
That's a tough question. Let me see. I think a myth about Black history is that it's not important. I don't know if that's a good answer. But anyway, I think that's a myth. And I think that all history is important, not just European history, not just Jewish history, not just Native American history, but all history is important. And because of slavery and because of the fallout, I guess, for lack of a better word, from slavery, most people feel that, people who are engaged in learning and teaching Black history are militants, we're activists, we're, hardcore, we're angry. But that's not the case. The case is Black history is just as important as any other history. And until all of our society are aware of that and believe that, then that myth will continue.
I'm going to ask one more follow-up question. Just looking for a list of names here, and if not known names, an occupation like teacher or professor. Who are the most prominent figures in your knowledge of Black history and your who have you most related with and followed in that sense?
That's a good question. I read a lot of fiction, and so Toni Morrison, Nika Giovanni, Maya Angelou, all females. Frederick Douglass is not fiction, but his work is very important. Recently, and I said this to some teachers recently, I, for some reason in my study of Black history, had somehow overlooked James Baldwin. I've read his work, a bunch of it, but for some reason I didn't know that he was so significant in the civil rights era, and that he had done so much to enhance our rights. Excuse me, and I'm not sure how I missed it, but I'm now studying him. Some more recent authors are Ta-Nehisi Coates, Hannah Nicole Jones, and I just recently discovered Carol Hobson, who wrote about Bessie Coleman, who was the first female, even before Amelia Earhart. Bessie Coleman was the first female pilot. And so those are people that I'm recognizing and that I've learned about and that I am enamored with studying.
I'm Carter Kashuba, and this is MBTV.